The galaxy had never seen such power. The Council of the Stars ruled everything, from the distant colonies to the heart of the galaxy itself. For centuries, their word was law, and no one dared to challenge their might. But everything changed when a single human, a member of a small but rising colony, defied them. They had no idea what kind of trouble they were about to cause. This human had been a leader. Not by title, but by action. They had fought for what they believed in, speaking out against the injustice done to their people. Their words were like fire, igniting something deep inside others. The council had kept quiet, thinking that it was just one person, an insignificant speck in a galaxy of millions. They couldn't have been more wrong. It started with whispers. The humans' words spread, reaching far beyond the colony where they lived. It was a simple message: we are more than what they say we are. And before the council could react, it had already begun. Humans from other colonies, who had been oppressed for too long, started to listen. They were waking up, and it was too late for the council to stop them. Fearing that this rebellion might grow, the council gathered in their massive chamber, their faces hard with determination. They couldn't let this human's influence spread any further. The whispers had to be silenced, no matter the cost. Their decision was clear: the human must die. The execution was scheduled, but it wasn't just about removing one person. The council wanted to send a message to all humans. If they dared to rise, this would be their fate. They believed that by executing this leader, they would crush the spirit of humanity. The galaxy would see it and understand that no one could challenge the council's power. The announcement of the execution spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Humans everywhere gasped in horror. But instead of fear, something else began to stir deep within them. The council had underestimated the power of one human. They didn't realize that this would be the spark that ignited something much bigger. As the human was brought before the council, they walked with a calmness that unsettled even the coldest of their executioners. The human knew what was coming, but they also knew that their death would mean something far more powerful than their life ever could. Their eyes never wavered from the faces of the council members. They weren't afraid. Instead, they were determined. When the final sentence was spoken, and the execution began, the human's final words echoed across the chamber: "You think you've won, but you've only begun the war." At that moment, everything changed. The galaxy didn't fall silent. It roared to life, fueled by the human's death. The council had made a deadly mistake. What they thought would break humanity had instead united them. The flames of rebellion had been lit, and no one could stop them now. The moment the human's execution was carried out, something unexpected happened. The galaxy, which had remained quiet and subdued for so long, suddenly awakened. But the spark wasn't just the death of one person, it was the words that followed, the fire that had been ignited inside everyone who had heard them. The human had not died in vain. As the human fell, the words, "You've only begun the war," seemed to echo across every communication network, from the most distant colonies to the brightest cities in the galaxy. Their death had unleashed something far greater than what the council had planned. The humans were not broken, they were united. But the true power was in the silence that followed. For weeks, nothing happened. The council assumed they had squashed the rebellion before it could even begin. They thought the humans had been cowed into submission by the execution. But in the shadows, across the galaxy, whispers began again. This time, they were louder. Stronger. Each whisper grew into a voice, and each voice became a roar. In the underbelly of human colonies, in dark alleys, and secret meeting rooms, people gathered. They spoke not of vengeance, but of freedom. Of taking back what was rightfully theirs. These weren't soldiers, not yet, but ordinary people who had had enough. Some were farmers, others engineers, some were former soldiers who had lost everything to the council's rule. All of them shared the same belief, that humanity had been oppressed for too long. The time to rise had come. One by one, they began to act. It started small, small acts of defiance that seemed insignificant to the Council. Ships disappeared from their radar, and signals went silent. First, a few, then dozens, then hundreds. It wasn't an organized rebellion. It was chaos, but it was chaos with purpose. The humans had learned to fight back in the shadows, using the very system that oppressed them to their advantage. But even as the rebellion spread, the Council remained confident. They believed that as long as they controlled the communication networks, they could stop any uprising before it could truly begin. They didn't realize that humanity wasn't just fighting to survive anymore, they were fighting to thrive. On one of the most heavily guarded human colonies, a group of rebels managed to sabotage the Council's control center. It was a simple plan, yet incredibly daring. A few rebel fighters snuck in under the cover of night, and using stolen Council technology, they gained access to the central hub that controlled the galaxy's communication networks. Within hours, every broadcast across the galaxy was hijacked. The human message was clear, loud, and impossible to ignore: we are not afraid. The Council was furious. They had underestimated the humans. The message was a declaration, not just of defiance, but of unity. Humanity had awakened, and they would not stop until the Council had been overthrown. Back on Earth, the human leader who had once spoken those fateful words, "You've only begun the war," was seen as a martyr. But now, they were becoming a symbol. A symbol of hope. They were more than just a single person now, they were the face of an entire race ready to fight for their future. Their last stand had sparked the birth of something far greater than anyone had expected. The first true battle of the rebellion was about to begin. The Council's heavy-handed response was inevitable, but the humans were no longer hiding in the shadows. They had become a force of their own, a force to be reckoned with. And as the galaxy watched in awe, they all knew one thing for certain: the rebellion had only just begun. It was a simple act that no one could have predicted. The Council had thought they had silenced the humans, but they had only pushed them deeper into the shadows. The death of one human leader had become a symbol of rebellion, a symbol that spread faster than fire through the dry grasslands. What the Council didn't realize was that every action they took to suppress the humans only fed the flames of resistance. The message that echoed across the galaxy, "We are not afraid," had a power of its own. It was more than just words, it was a call to arms, a rallying cry for every human who had ever been oppressed, every human who had been overlooked or silenced. In the dark corners of the galaxy, hidden from the Council's prying eyes, humans were preparing for something bigger than they had ever dreamed possible. The rebellion wasn't a single event, it was the beginning of a movement. At first, the resistance was scattered, with no clear leader or central command. Groups of humans, from all walks of life, began to rise up, each in their own way. Some fought with weapons, others with words, and still, others with technology. But all of them shared one thing: a burning desire for freedom. They knew the cost of standing against the Council, but they also knew that they had no choice. The galaxy would never be the same again. One such group, a ragtag band of former soldiers, engineers, and ordinary civilians, gathered on a remote, forgotten planet. It wasn't much of a base, but it was theirs. They worked tirelessly, refining weapons, gathering supplies, and building alliances. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's ingenuity. They had thought that humanity was too fragmented, too divided to ever rise up as a unified force. But they were wrong. In the heart of the rebellion's growing strength, a woman emerged as a leader. She wasn't a warrior by trade, but she had seen enough pain and loss to know what was at stake. She had been a scientist once, working on peaceful projects that helped the human colonies. But when the Council wiped out her research and imprisoned her colleagues, something inside her snapped. The day she lost everything, she vowed to never be powerless again. She was one of many who had been touched by the human leader's last words, and now she was one of the voices of the rebellion. With each speech she gave, each strategy she devised, more humans began to listen. She spoke of unity. She spoke of freedom. And she spoke of revenge. Not out of anger, but out of justice. The Council had destroyed their lives, and now it was time for the galaxy to pay attention. The spark that had ignited the rebellion soon turned into a raging fire. The rebels started taking strategic targets, small stations and supply lines, making their moves in the dead of night. They struck quickly, with precision, and vanished before the Council's forces could respond. The humans were learning the art of guerrilla warfare, and they were doing it better than anyone expected. The galaxy had underestimated them, and now, they were paying the price. The first real victory came when a small group of rebels, led by the woman who had risen to prominence, managed to hijack a Council supply ship. It wasn't a huge victory, but it was symbolic. The humans had broken through. They had done what the Council thought was impossible. The message spread quickly: the rebellion is real. The fight is on. From that moment on, everything changed. Humans across the galaxy began to rise. Some joined the fight directly, while others supported the cause in quieter ways, by hiding refugees, by spreading news of the rebellion, by sabotaging Council operations. The rebellion was no longer just a whisper, it was a roar, a growing wave that no one could ignore. The Council, in their arrogance, still believed they could crush the rebellion with force. But they had never encountered humanity's resolve. The flame had been lit, and it was spreading faster than they could contain it. The galaxy had changed, and it would never be the same again. The Council finally realized the truth they had refused to see. The rebellion was no longer small. It was no longer scattered. It was growing, spreading like a storm across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing where they should not exist. Supply lines were breaking. Outposts were falling silent. For the first time in centuries, the Council felt something unfamiliar. Fear. They called an emergency gathering. The great chamber filled with leaders from powerful species, all speaking at once. Some demanded total war. Others warned that the humans were not fighting like normal enemies. They did not hold ground. They did not seek glory. They struck fast, disappeared, and returned stronger. The Council chose force. It had always worked before. A massive fleet was sent to a key human world. The Council wanted a public victory. They wanted the galaxy to watch humans fall. The message was simple: resistance is useless. But once again, they underestimated humanity. The human world looked weak from space. Old defenses. Few warships. Easy prey. The Council fleet moved in with confidence. Then the trap closed. Hidden weapons activated across the planet's surface. Ships that looked like cargo vessels transformed into attack craft. The humans had turned everything into a weapon. The first wave of Council ships was destroyed in seconds. Explosions lit up space like burning stars. Panic spread through the Council fleet. Human pilots did not fight with fear. They fought with focus. Every move was planned. Every strike had a purpose. They did not chase fleeing enemies. They cut off escape. They targeted command ships. They knew exactly where to hit. Across the galaxy, humans watched the battle live. For the first time, they saw the Council bleed. The image burned into their minds. The Council was not untouchable. The myth was broken. The woman who had become a leader stood aboard a command ship, watching the battle unfold. She felt no joy. Only resolve. This was not revenge. This was survival. She ordered the fleet to stop once the Council ships retreated. The message was clear. Humans were not monsters. They were not conquerors. They were fighters who had been pushed too far. But the Council did not see mercy. They saw weakness. In response, they did something unforgivable. They targeted civilians. Human cities, far from any battle zone, were attacked. Millions died in a single cycle. The Council believed this would end the rebellion. Instead, it sealed their fate. The galaxy reacted in shock. Neutral worlds watched in horror. Some had feared humans. Now they feared the Council more. Quietly, secretly, help began to flow toward human forces. Weapons. Supplies. Information. The Council had lost more than a battle. They had lost trust. Humans everywhere felt the loss. Families destroyed. Worlds burned. Grief turned into iron-hard anger. The rebellion changed that day. It was no longer about freedom alone. It was about justice. Human fleets began to unite under one banner. Old rivals set aside their differences. Scientists, soldiers, and civilians worked together. New ships were built faster than anyone thought possible. Human technology evolved at terrifying speed, adapting from every battle. The Council watched this growth with disbelief. Every move they made seemed to make humans stronger. Every attack created more resistance. The execution of one human had become the greatest mistake in galactic history. As the fires of war spread, one truth became impossible to deny. Humanity was no longer rising. Humanity had risen. And the final storm was coming. The Council tried to regain control with one last plan. It was cruel, simple, and meant to end everything in a single strike. They chose a place that mattered to every species in the galaxy, the Council's Grand Relay Station. It was a giant hub in deep space that carried news, trade orders, and military commands across thousands of systems. If the Council held it, the galaxy stayed blind and quiet. If they lost it, their rule would crack in half. They announced a final warning to all worlds: any ship that helped humans would be destroyed. Any planet that hid humans would be punished. The Council expected the galaxy to obey, as it always had. But the galaxy had watched too much. It had seen burned human cities. It had seen Council lies. It had seen humans fight with discipline, not madness. So when the Council made their threat, something strange happened. Many worlds did not answer. Some stayed silent. Some sent secret messages to the human rebellion. Some even moved fleets to protect trade routes, but everyone understood what that really meant. The Council had ruled with fear for centuries, yet fear was starting to lose its power. The humans did not rush. They planned. The woman leader met with captains, engineers, and spies inside a dark command room. A star map floated above the table like a glowing ghost. She pointed to the Grand Relay Station. Around it, red markers showed Council fleets, mines, and defense rings. It looked impossible. Then she showed a second map. It was full of hidden routes, old tunnels, and forgotten jump lanes. Places the Council ignored because they thought no one could use them. Humans had spent years surviving in the cracks of the galaxy. They knew how to move unseen. The plan was dangerous: split into small groups, strike from 3 directions, and disable the relay without destroying it. If they destroyed it, the galaxy would go dark. If they captured it, the Council would lose their voice. On the day of the attack, space around the relay station looked calm. Council ships floated like steel sharks, confident and ready. Inside the station, Council commanders laughed about the last human mistake. Then the first human strike hit. It did not come from the front. It came from below, from a jump lane the Council believed was dead. Human ships appeared in perfect formation, moving like one body. They did not fire wildly. They fired with purpose. Defense satellites vanished in clean bursts of light. The Council fleet rushed to respond, only to meet the second wave from the side. Human stealth craft released bright flares and false signals, confusing enemy scanners. Council targeting systems locked onto ghosts. Their shots missed. Their ships collided. Their formation broke. Then the third wave arrived from behind. This wave carried something new. Not a super weapon, not magic, but a human idea, a signal blade. A focused burst that cut communication without cutting life. It sliced through Council command channels like a knife through cloth. In seconds, the Council fleet could not hear orders. They could not share targets. They could not even tell who was friend or enemy. For the first time, the Council was fighting blind. The battle became chaos. Explosions lit up the dark. Ships spun, burned, and broke apart. The relay station shook as boarding teams slammed into its outer locks. Humans pushed through corridors with simple weapons and strong teamwork. The Council guards were trained to intimidate. Humans were trained to adapt. In the central control room, the woman leader stood before the main console. Council officials tried to bargain. They promised peace. They promised rights. They promised anything. She did not shout. She did not smile. She simply played the recording of the execution. The human's last words echoed again, "You've only begun the war." Then she spoke, calm and clear. "The war ends when your rule ends." She pressed a command, and the relay station broadcast across the galaxy. Not lies. Not threats. The truth. The burned cities. The dead civilians. The Council's hidden orders. The proof was undeniable. The galaxy erupted, not just with flames of battle, but with a fire of choice. Worlds that had stayed silent now moved. Council allies broke away. Supply routes closed. Local uprisings began. The Council's empire cracked in 1,000 places at once. The Council tried to retreat. Humans let many ships go. Not because they were weak, but because they wanted the galaxy to see the difference. Humans did not need to destroy everything to win. They needed to end the machine that kept everyone under a boot. As the last Council flagship fled into deep space, the relay station remained in human hands. The war was not fully over, but the Council's grip was broken. Their greatest weapon, fear, had failed. And in the burning light of a changing galaxy, one truth became clear to every world watching. The Council executed a human to make an example.